slinging mud like some trolls in social media, calling her names or saying things that weren't true about her personal life.
Samantha Markle didn't just throw shade at her sister. She lobbed a grenade that could shatter Meghan Markle's carefully polished royal fairy tale. For years, Meghan has stood on stages, smiled for cameras, and repeated the story of her life as though it were a script. The outsider who conquered tradition. The duchess who rewrote the rules. The mother who cradled her children under the world's brightest spotlight. But according to her own half-sister, that entire story wasn't just exaggerated, it was engineered from the ground up. And that's the brutal twist. Samantha isn't whining about family squabbles. She's tearing down the glossy image brick by brick, calling Meghan's narrative a deliberate deception so bold it could rock the monarchy itself.
Yeah, she does. And so there's no one on this planet that can tell me with her ego that the articles that go...
Her accusations aren't whispers anymore, they're daggers. She claims Meghan lied about her childhood, erased her family, staged motherhood, and built a false empire on smoke and mirrors. This isn't just about sibling rivalry, it's about credibility. Because if Samantha's words hold even a grain of truth, Meghan's crown jewel, her image as a modern royal, could collapse under the weight of lies. We're not talking about petty drama. We're talking about deception that bleeds into royal lineage, succession laws, and the future of the crown itself. And here's where it gets darker. Samantha isn't alone. A mystery woman known only as DL has stepped forward with medical records, hospital bills, and allegations that the Duchess's pregnancies were staged from start to finish. Imagine the royal heirs themselves caught in a narrative that might not line up with centuries of tradition. There's so much to unravel here, and we need to dive straight into it before this story gets buried under palace silence and legal threats. Because if Samantha's claims are even partly true, Meghan's image as a victim isn't just cracking, it's collapsing. It all starts with one line. Meghan Markle repeated over and over again, "I grew up as an only child."
About people that I really don't know, but I grew up as an only child, which everyone who grew up around me knows.
A statement delivered with a smile, meant to frame her as the lonely outsider who climbed into the royal spotlight with grit and resilience. But according to Samantha Markle, that line wasn't just misleading, it was a calculated lie. Samantha is Meghan's half-sister, and she wasted no time ripping open the facade. In interviews and court documents, she flatly called Meghan's claim false, reminding the world that not only did Meghan have siblings, but those siblings were erased like they were inconvenient footnotes in a glossy biography. In Samantha's telling, Meghan didn't distance herself from her family, she deleted them. And here's the sinister part. Samantha insists this wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was deliberate. She says Meghan engineered her backstory, cutting away roots and rewriting her past to fit the role of victim, because an only child has no witnesses. An only child has no contradictions. An only child can craft a narrative without anyone stepping forward to say, that's not how it happened. Think about it. Meghan has built a brand on authenticity, telling her truth in Netflix specials, Oprah interviews, and podcasts. But if her truth about something as basic as family is staged, what else is? How deep does the script run? And that's why Samantha's accusation hit like a bombshell. It wasn't just about childhood memories, it was about trust. If Meghan was willing to erase her family for a cleaner narrative, then maybe the rest of her story, the victimhood, the struggles, even the royal motherhood, was nothing more than theater dressed in royal lace. And here's where it gets worse. Samantha didn't stop at childhood. She went straight for the heart of Meghan's image, accusing her of manufacturing an identity from the ground up. And once you see the pattern, it's impossible to unsee. If Samantha's first strike was exposing Meghan's only child claim as a lie, her second strike was even more brutal.
Because she does hold the PR cards. I do not, and that's the difference.
She accused Meghan of building her entire identity like a stage play. For years, Meghan has painted herself as the woman who rewrote the rules of royalty, the humanitarian, the defiant duchess, the glowing mother who conquered tradition. But Samantha tears this down with precision. In her words, Meghan isn't authentic, she's theatrical. Every photo op, every humanitarian gesture, every teary-eyed speech about resilience, Samantha says it's propaganda. And here's the kicker. The deeper you look, the more the cracks widen. Meghan's biographies leave out key family ties. Her interviews contradict each other. Even her humanitarian image feels less like a calling and more like branding. Samantha frames her sister not as a victim of the press, but as the architect of her own false empire. The Duchess didn't climb into royalty gracefully. She allegedly rewrote her past to fit the role. Critics whisper that Meghan's entire arc, waitress to Duchess, outcast to icon, feels a little too neat, a little too cinematic. And Samantha amplifies those whispers, insisting Meghan has been directing her life like a Hollywood production all along. It doesn't look like coincidence. It looks like strategy. A blueprint where family becomes expendable, truth becomes negotiable, and image becomes everything. And just when people thought Samantha's accusations couldn't get more explosive, the story detonated. A new voice entered the scene, not a family member, but a woman who claimed to have carried Meghan's children. And she didn't come empty-handed, she came with receipts. Just when Samantha Markle's accusations had everyone questioning Meghan's childhood story, the narrative took a darker turn. Out of nowhere, a mystery woman identified only as DL stepped forward, and she didn't arrive with whispers. She came armed with what she claimed were hospital bills, medical records, and the shadow of a non-disclosure agreement. DL's allegation? That she, not Meghan, was the real surrogate behind Meghan's royal pregnancies. Think about how explosive that is. Meghan's glowing photos in designer coats, the carefully cradled baby bump, the PR-perfect strolls under flashing cameras. DL claimed all of it was smoke and mirrors. While Meghan posed for the world, DL says she was the one carrying the royal heirs in isolation, silenced by promises of privacy and payments that quickly turned into betrayal. And here's the sinister twist. DL's story wasn't vague. It wasn't the usual recycled tabloid gossip. She gave vivid details, recruitment meetings in California, contracts signed in back rooms, months of loneliness that felt less like a pregnancy journey and more like being locked in a royal vault. She painted a picture of postpartum complications, mounting medical bills, and the pain of being erased from her own story while Meghan soaked in the spotlight. Critics seized on this with fury, because if even fragments of DL's account are true, Meghan didn't just bend tradition, she staged motherhood itself, weaponizing illusion as her most elaborate costume yet. And here's where the cycle spins darker. With allegations this detailed, you'd expect Meghan and Harry to slam them down immediately. But instead of proof, what came next was silence. Silence so loud it began to sound like a confession. When DL's allegations hit the headlines, the world expected Meghan and Harry to shut it down instantly. A statement, a denial, a simple DNA test, anything that could bury the story in minutes. Instead, the Sussexes went quiet, dead quiet. But silence wasn't their only move. According to reports, their legal machine roared to life. Letters were fired off to media outlets, warnings were issued, threats of lawsuits loomed. It was defense by intimidation, not defense by evidence. And here's the brutal truth. In scandals like this, silence doesn't equal dignity, it screams suspicion. Because if there was truly nothing to hide, why not show the receipts? Why not take the test, produce the proof, and end the rumors once and for all? Instead, Meghan and Harry played a different game, silence wrapped in legal muscle. PR experts tore this strategy apart, arguing that while lawsuits might muzzle newspapers, they don't silence whispers. In fact, the absence of denial only poured gasoline on the fire. And that's the sinister cycle. The couple who built their empire on speaking their truth suddenly refused to speak at all. They've done Netflix tell-alls, Oprah interviews, podcasts about authenticity, but when it came to the most direct challenge to Meghan's image as a mother, their voices vanished. Not muted by the palace, not blocked by tabloids, missing by choice. Critics didn't see that as strength. They saw it as fear. Because in the court of public opinion, the loudest confession isn't what you say, it's what you refuse to say. And here's where it gets worse. This silence didn't just fuel gossip. It cracked open a far bigger question, one that strikes at the very foundation of the monarchy itself. Royal births aren't just private family milestones, they're public events woven into centuries of tradition. Diana stepped out of St. Mary's Hospital with baby William in her arms, glowing but exhausted. Kate Middleton repeated the ritual 3 times, smiling for cameras just hours after giving birth. The message was clear: transparency, proof, continuity. But Meghan? She broke the script. No hospital steps. No clear medical confirmation. No royal physician allowed to verify the birth. Instead, there was secrecy wrapped in confusion. And then came the images that didn't add up. timelines that didn't match, photos that critics dissected frame by frame, and the infamous folding belly clip that refuses to die on social media. And this is where DL's allegations land like a hammer. If she really was the surrogate, then Meghan didn't just bend royal tradition. She concealed something that could shake the very foundation of the monarchy. Because succession isn't built on vibes or PR spin. It's built on bloodlines, transparency, and absolute proof. If surrogacy was involved and never disclosed, critics argue it could destabilize the legitimacy of Archie and Lilibet as heirs. Imagine two innocent children caught in a constitutional storm, not because of who they are, but because of how their story may have been hidden. For the monarchy, it's not about gossip, it's about survival. If royal births lose credibility, so does the institution itself. And here's the kicker. Meghan and Harry's silence didn't calm the storm. It intensified it. By refusing to speak, by hiding behind legal threats, they left the monarchy exposed to whispers of illegitimacy. And in a family built on ritual and history, whispers can be more dangerous than scandals. And this leads us to the final unraveling, because once the public stops believing, the brand doesn't just weaken, it collapses. For years, Meghan and Harry built themselves into a brand. Glossy Netflix documentaries, Oprah confessions, and carefully staged PR moments that sold them as truth-tellers, rebels, and survivors. But Samantha's accusations and DL's bombshell claims cracked that image wide open, and suddenly everything the couple had said before was dragged back into the spotlight, only this time with suspicion. Polls showed shifting tides. Audiences who once sympathized began to question. Every photo, every soundbite, every carefully choreographed moment started to look flimsy, like props in a collapsing stage play. The empowerment speeches? Critics replayed them as performances. The authenticity brand reframed as propaganda. Insiders whispered about tension behind closed doors. Meghan and Harry, they said, were looking more like business partners than husband and wife, clinging to a brand even as the foundation crumbled. Samantha seized the moment, casting herself not as the jealous sister, but as the truth-teller who finally cracked the mask. For her, this wasn't revenge, it was exposure. And here's the brutal irony. Meghan, the duchess who promised to rewrite the royal story, now stands accused of authoring the greatest royal fiction of all time. Samantha's words made the glossy image look like a house of cards, and DL's testimony blew at it until it started to fall. Because when a brand is built on performance, it only takes one exposed script for the whole show to collapse. And Meghan's silence, it's the loudest line in the play. But if you think this is the end, think again, because every time the Markle drama looks like it's winding down, another revelation detonates, and the whispers say the next one could be even darker. So here we are. Samantha Markle has swung the hammer, tearing into her sister's polished fairy tale with accusations of lies, erasures, and manufactured identity. Then came DL, the mystery woman who claimed to have carried Meghan's children, bringing hospital bills and whispers of NDAs that painted Meghan's pregnancies as a stage-managed illusion. And what was Meghan's response? Silence. No proof, no denial, only lawyers and threats. But in the court of public opinion, that silence didn't protect her. It screamed louder than any headline. It made critics believe the unthinkable. The Duchess once branded herself as a modern royal, a symbol of truth and resilience. But the more unanswered questions pile up, the more that crown starts to look like a costume. The royal rebel, the humanitarian, the glowing mother, all of it now looks like theater, a Hollywood script dressed in royal lace. And that's the brutal twist. Meghan isn't just fighting gossip columns anymore, she's fighting the collapse of her credibility, because if Samantha's accusations and DL's testimony hold even a fraction of truth, Meghan's story isn't inspiring, it's illusion. But here's the kicker, this isn't the final chapter. Every time Meghan's narrative cracks, another revelation rises from the shadows. Insiders whisper about the next bombshell, a secret Meghan allegedly can't bury. And if what we've just unpacked looks devastating, wait until you see what's next. This is Hollywood Daily Reports. Subscribe, stay tuned, and buckle up because Meghan Markle's story isn't calming down. It's only getting darker.